Daylight Savings Time is brought to you in high-definition black and white. Hi, my name is James, but most people call me James. You know, I like movies to look and feel of their time. Modern pictures, say those made between 2006 and the present, I'll definitely go with the Blu-ray for the home video release because it'll best match the digital picture quality from the film's theatrical release. Otherwise, I'm just fine with a DVD. I see no reason to upgrade my copy of, say, Casablanca or Sunset Boulevard because those stories are perfect no matter what the picture quality. That is, unless some wacko is trying to colorize a black and white film. If anyone ever tries to push a colorized black and white movie on you, just say no. I'm thinking of you, Ted Turner. Which brings me to VHS tapes. After radio, TV, and Betamax, they were next in line for home entertainment. I've been collecting VHS tapes all my life, have resisted the urge to throw them away, and I'm lucky to still have a working VHS player. Please pray for it to have a long-lasting life. Call me nuts, I think VHSs look even better on today's bigger TVs than they did back in the day. After all, a little bit of graininess never hurt a movie. I think there's still a place for VHSs in this world. Without further ado, here's my collection.
Alright, here they are. They take up an entire door. We're going to start with 2001: A Space Odyssey. I was not prepared for this movie. I caught it on TV in the late 90s. You'll probably hear me say that a lot. And I had actually seen the sequel, 2010, before I saw this. And 2010 begins with a recap of this film, and it's much more straightforward. So I was not prepared for how out of this world this film was. In fact, I didn't even finish it when it aired on TV. I can distinctly remember watching the Stargate sequence, and then as soon as Dave's body appeared to him, he had that out-of-body experience. It scared the hell out of me, and I actually turned off the TV and ran to my room. Ace Ventura and its sequel, Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. I was just the right age to get caught up in the Jim Carrey mania of the 90s. And so I remember watching this, Dumb and Dumber, Batman Forever, and The Mask, all in, 1994 to 1995. And I know that this came with an Ace Ventura Pet Detective card, which for the life of me I've never been able to find. It got lost in some box in the decades since this movie came out. Alright, Alien. Such a classic. I got introduced to this movie at a young age, and so that probably means that I could handle movie violence better than your average kid, which was awesome. Now, the problem with this video, however, is that it gives away the entire movie on the back. You literally read this over, and it spells out the entire film for you, so that's bad marketing right there. However, it is cool that this video does have a trailer for Aliens at the beginning of it, so you at least know to check out the spectacular sequel, which we have right here, Aliens. I always liked this cover. The early 90s VHS re-release of these movies were very well designed, great to look at, and this is, of course, one of the best action movies ever made. Also brings back good memories of visiting my grandparents. Their Walmart had the Aliens arcade game, and man, I spent a lot of quarters in that game. Alright, Amistad, underappreciated Steven Spielberg movie, the movie that introduced me to Jaimon Hansu. God, I hope I got his name right. But it's a drama about a slave ship that reaches America, and there's a movement to try to set them free or send them back to Africa. Also stars Morgan Freeman, Anthony Hopkins, and Texas's own Matthew McConaughey. Alright. Anaconda. Man, I was late to the game on Anaconda. But I was so happy when I finally watched it, which was only a couple years ago. If you want to revoke my 90s card, feel free. But great movie. Jon Voight, so over the top. J-Lo and Ice Cube do a good job in this one. But hell of a comedy. If you can even call it a comedy. It feels like a comedy. Apollo 13. Alright. Very thankful to have watched this movie when I did. I was just getting into space exploration and science fiction, and Mom got this for me to remind me that a lot of the space stuff you see in the movies didn't really happen. So this is my introduction to fact science fact, space exploration that was not fictional. So, beautiful movie. Maybe on my list of all-time perfect movies, of which there are only 7 or 8 on my list. Alright, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Yes. The introduction to this TV show. My God, it will scare you even to this day. So this one, also, amazing that the VHS is orange. You can't really do that with a DVD or Blu-ray. Change the color of your disc or tape. So, anyway, we have a few episodes on this one. Tale of the Shiny Red Bicycle and Tale of the Frozen Ghost. I guarantee you more people remember that one than the Red Bicycle one, since it's got that creepy kid who keeps saying, "I am cold." Pretty sure Melissa Joan Hart was in that episode as well. Best known for Clarissa Explains It All. As good as it gets, probably the first Oscar contender or Oscar nominated movie that I actually liked, because I've always been a Jack Nicholson fan. He won his final Oscar for this film, his third one. Also winning an Oscar that year was Helen Hunt. Fun fact, every time Jack Nicholson has won an Oscar, his female co-star / leading lady has also won an Oscar. So Jack is good luck for Oscar contenders. But wonderful film, highly recommend. Written, and I don't know if it was directed by, actually, let me look it up. Was it written and directed? Yes, written and directed by James L. Brooks. Along with Mark, I can barely read this, I'm going to call it Andrus. James L. Brooks, most known for The Simpsons, or at least his name was on the credits. I'm not sure what his actual role was on the show. The Avengers, not the Marvel comic. This is based on the 1960s British TV show. It's one of those guilty pleasure movies that I have. Yeah, not much to say about that one. Alright. Batman. This is not my original VHS. That one is retired because I wore it out so much, but I don't have the heart to throw it away. So, definitely the movie I've watched the most in my life. Michael Keaton, not my favorite Batman, but Jack Nicholson is my favorite Joker, and I could watch this movie once a week and not get bored of it. Hey, right behind it we have another Tim Burton film, Beetlejuice. Excellent Keaton movie. Gina Davis, Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin, this is probably like the first real comedy that he did before he really took it up with 30 Rock and his Donald Trump impression. Also co-stars Winona Ryder, of course. Excellent film. Hey. Blank Man. Damon Wayans becomes a superhero after the death of his grandmother, but great comedy co-starring David Alan Grier. If you ever want to be a low-tech superhero, this is your guidebook. Alright. Bugsy, not a bad gangster film. Co-stars Annette Bening. I believe they got married after making this. I don't think it was before. Nominated for 10 Academy Awards. I don't know if it won anything. But, solid gangster picture. The true story of Bugsy Siegel, who I don't want to say started the Las Vegas gambling scene, but gets a lot of credit for making Las Vegas the hot spot that it became. Along with Anaconda, we also got Congo. Good, solid 90s flicks. And again, I apologize, one I was not introduced to until some years ago. Probably was made to take advantage of Jurassic Park being such a hit, but because it's also based on a Michael Crichton story. Very quick appearances by Bruce Campbell and Joe Don Baker. Leading actor is Laura Linney, who I don't think has ever given us a bad performance, but might fall into the guilty pleasure category. Alright, Stay There, Stood Still. Along with the original War of the Worlds, which is down at the bottom of the shelf, these are the two films that got me into watching films at the Paramount Theater here in Austin. The Paramount has a wonderful summer film series every year showing classic cinema. So I forget what summer it was, but when Independence Day came out, they had a double feature of this movie and War of the Worlds. And this is an excellent science fiction film by director, I know his last name, I'm blanking on his first name, Robert Wise. There you go, Robert Wise, who also did The Sound of Music and the first Star Trek film. But solid movie, and a nice indictment of man's inhumanity to man. Okay, The Doors. In Europe, 1968. I'm a fan of The Doors, Jim Morrison, and his music. There is a scene in this tape where Jim was so drunk he could not perform, but Ray Manzarek, awesome guy, stepped up and he actually sang the Doors tunes at one concert while still playing the piano / organ in the concert. Alright, get in there. Alright, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Excellent comedy starring Steve Martin and Michael Caine. Two con men try to swindle money out of an heiress, directed by Frank Oz, and also co-starring Ian McDiarmid. So you got the guy who played the Emperor and the guy who played Yoda in the same film, or at least one starring one actor and directed by another. But solid comedy. Probably the first comedy I ever really enjoyed rewatching as a kid. Followed by Dragnet, another solid comedy with Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd. They do a rap at the end of the movie. It's 80s rap sung by two very white men, so it definitely worth a laugh. But very quotable movie. Highly recommend. Actually, let me get that back where it was. I guess all these are facing one particular direction, but this one is one of those large VHSs where the title's on the opposite side, so I gotta put it in that way. Alright, E.T. Okay, I had not rewatched this movie for a very long time. I finally did some months ago. It was a lot scarier than I remembered it. If you were to replace John Williams' music with, I don't know, something by Ennio Morricone, who did the soundtrack to The Thing the same year this came out, it's a completely different movie. Although I was regretful because I always was told by a friend of mine that she was just rabidly frightened of this movie. In fact, I do an impression of E.T. to get under her skin a little bit. But after watching this, I think I owe her an apology because, yeah, I can definitely understand why some kids were frightened by that movie. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, based on the novel by Hunter S. Thompson, directed by Terry Gilliam. Hope I got the name right. But very out of this world. For the second time in this video I've used that phrase. Out of this world, let's call it just trippy. A very trippy drug trip to Las Vegas where hilarity ensues. And a chronicle of the death of the American dream. Battlestar Galactica 1980. Fun story behind this film. It's one of those movies that I didn't know the context of it. I thought this was just like a standalone film. I had no idea that it was based on a TV show or was the attempted spin-off of a TV show. But me and a friend of mine, actually somewhere in a different tub of stuff, I have a VHS of me and a friend of mine doing a Mystery Science Theater style riff of this tape. And we actually took cardboard cutouts of ourselves and taped them to the TV, pointed a VHS camera at the TV in order to pretend that we were really in a theater mocking this movie. So always have a good memory of this tape. Okay. Get in there. All right, Gangs of New York. I would like to believe that at some point VHS technology advanced to the point where you could fit a movie of this length onto just one tape. If you ever went to Blockbuster, you always noticed that they would have two tapes rubber banded together in order to fit a film of this size. Geez, how long was this? This was 167 minutes, so just under 3 hours. But it got to fit on one tape, but then I guess DVD replaced it. But excellent Scorsese film. Daniel Day-Lewis robbed of an Academy Award. I think he lost to, was it Adrian Brody that year? Alright. George Carlin, Jammin' in New York. George Carlin, all-time greatest comedian. The guy who introduced me to cuss words. The 7 dirty words you can't say on TV. And also my eternal love and desire to own a flamethrower. All that came from George Carlin's stand-up routine. This one always comes to mind when I go to the airport because it features his airport routine about boarding a plane, being at the terminal. Very quotable. If you're ever a frequent flyer. Great Britain by Train is a movie about traveling Great Britain by train. I think when I was a kid, like a lot of Americans, I romanticized the idea of traveling by train. No clue where this came from, but I would put it on in the background when I wanted to think about traveling by train, and this will show you how to do it in, God, what year was this made? I'm not sure it even says. It doesn't even say on the tape. It was made in Charlotte, North Carolina, if that helps, but this will show you how to apply for a pass and travel guide when traveling to Great Britain. I'm going to assume it was late 80s, early 90s, just judging from the look of the tape. GoldenEye, almost the first James Bond movie I ever saw. I think late fall, early winter of 1995, I was gifted Dr. No, the first James Bond movie. And so to me, Sean Connery is my James Bond. But this is the first one I ever saw in theaters. Excellent film. Pierce Brosnan, decent James Bond, but over time the gadgets kind of overshadowed his performance, which is a shame. All right behind there, we do have Goldfinger starring Sean Connery, who is James Bond. This one kind of established the formula for a lot of James Bond films that came after it, which is a curse and a blessing, because on one hand this movie is excellent to watch, funny, a lot of action, good story, but James Bond kind of lost some of his spycraft as a result of it, so take it or leave it. All right. Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams. Excellent film. He's based on Adrian Cronauer, a real-life radio personality. I'm not sure if the real-life Adrian Cronauer was as bombastic and hilarious as Robin Williams, but excellent film, and kind of not a blatant anti-war film, but definitely shows you the just the stupidity of military thinking during the Vietnam era. Addams Family Halloween Special. I brought back the original cast for this TV movie. A good Halloween favorite of mine, where the Addams Family celebrates Halloween almost in the same spirit as Christmas, which is appropriate if Halloween is your favorite holiday. All right, we have Hook. It's Hook, you know it. Right. The Hunley. Now, TNT in the 90s was really a place to go to watch Civil War movies. They would replay Gettysburg on that channel as often as they would show Shawshank Redemption. And they also made original movies like this one about the first submarine to sink a warship, which happened during the American Civil War. Stars Amanda Sante and Donald Sutherland. Yeah, back in the 90s, Ted Turner, a big Civil War buff. He actually had a cameo in the movie Gettysburg as a descendant of or an ancestor, I should say, of General Patton, who gets shot during Pickett's Charge. And Ted Turner used his power to make a lot of Civil War-based movies on his TV channel in the 90s. Right. Hunter Red October, I think this just celebrated an anniversary, a 30th anniversary. Solid Cold War movie. You'll notice I'll use the word solid, classic, and excellent quite a bit. And stars Sean Connery, Alec Baldwin. The only time Alec Baldwin played Jack Ryan, who would later be a role played by Harrison Ford, Ben Affleck, and now John Krasinski. Haven't seen much of the other ones. I've seen the Harrison Ford Jack Ryan movies, but I haven't seen Affleck or Krasinski. All right. Independence Day. I loved this film growing up. When I was, 8 or 9, I was concerned because this film was not nominated for every award ever made, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Effects, you name it. It should have won it. I can recall sitting on the first row of a theater to watch this movie. We had a school trip to San Antonio where I saw, I think, a movie of the Alamo at an IMAX theater, and it had a trailer for this movie with the White House blowing up. Oh, happy accident. I forgot I had this hidden in there. This VHS came with a reflector picture, I'm not sure the exact name, of the White House exploding. I think this came wrapped in the cover when it came here, or when I got it in its original plastic covering, but nice little addition. Also, I can most definitely recite President Whitmore's Independence Day speech from memory. If you'd ever like to hear it, let me know. Jurassic Park, the movie that made me fall in love with going to the theater. Now, in all fairness, the first film I can recall seeing in the theater was Fern Gully. But sometime later, this is the first film I can remember going to see in the theater that I fell in love with. Now, let's see. This, for the longest time, held the record for most trips to the theater with 4. That record stood for about 12 years up until Batman Begins came out, when I saw that movie 5 times. But Jurassic Park, amazing film. Might be on my list of all-time perfect films as well. And I can distinctly remember being at a friend's house, and there was a commercial on TV advertising the VHS release of Jurassic Park. It started with that famous shot of the water moving with the stomp of the incoming T-Rex. And if you were a kid, you were waiting forever for this to come out on home video, and it felt like it took years for it to arrive. So happy when it finally did. Okay, Jurassic Park also comes with a reflector picture thingy. I've gone back and forth on this one. I liked it a lot as a kid. I rewatched it when Jurassic World was coming out in 2015, and it wasn't as good as I remembered it, but I watched it like a year or two ago, and it was fine, just fine. Yeah, that's that. Kind of ironic that Land Before Time is right next to the Jurassic Park movies, but that's the way it's alphabetically playing out. Not gonna lie, because of Jurassic Park, I was always rooting for the T-Rex in this movie to eat the other dinosaurs, and the ending where the T-Rex falls off the cliff or mountain was always a disappointment. Alright. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Along with Christopher Nolan, if there's ever a Guy Ritchie movie in theaters, I'm sure to watch it. I've not yet seen every one of his films. There's a couple I've missed, but solid British crime drama. I can't recall. This is either a sequel or a prequel to another film that he did called Snatch, I think. Or maybe they're just kind of similar that people think they're related. God, I haven't seen Snatch since high school. Anyway, I don't know if I can get the captions to work on my VCR since I don't have the original remote for it. That would help, because, man, sometimes I cannot understand a British accent to save my life. Oops. Wish I could get the captions working on this one. Alright, The Longest Day. Do not watch this movie on Netflix, because Netflix dubs over the German scenes, and it just doesn't feel right. VHS, just like a TV release, has subtitles for the German scenes. This was made with multiple directors who directed the American and German segments. I don't know if there was a British director as well for the British segments, but there should have been. And excellent war film, amazing cast with everyone from Edmund O'Brien, Robert Mitchum, John Wayne, Henry Fonda. Oh God, who else? I think everybody was in this movie. They had a hard time getting funding for it at 20th Century Fox because they were spending all their money on Cleopatra at the time, which I've actually never seen that movie. At the time, it might have been one of the most expensive movies ever made, but Longest Day, I'm sure, is a far superior movie than that. I talked about Jim Carrey earlier, and we had The Mask. This is fun to watch because after the credits, there's an interview with Jim Carrey on the Space Ghost Coast to Coast show, which was probably the first talk show I ever saw as a kid. But, let's see, Jim Carrey, I don't think it came with anything, but solid comedy. People always tell me that I look like Jim Carrey. In fact, the weirdest compliment I've ever received is someone told me I could be his illegitimate son, in which case he owes me some money. Men in Black, was this 1997 or 1998 when this came out? 97. Okay. This is the first film I can recall seeing the trailer for it and noticing that there was a spot in the trailer that was not featured in the movie. That's a pretty common occurrence, but at the time I was confused as to why that would happen. But there was a joke where they were about to fire their guns, and Will Smith says to Tommy Lee Jones, "Do you know how to use these things?" To which Tommy Lee Jones replies, "No idea whatsoever." But a joke that was not featured in the movie, just the trailer. Alright. Mission Impossible. My God, it's hard to believe Tom Cruise is still making these. Long-time film series. Probably just as good as the James Bond movies. First one, the best. Not sure which one I would consider to be the second best one. Rogue Nation was really darn good. So was Ghost Protocol. But this is the first movie I can remember where I had to watch it at least 3 or 4 times to understand the plot. What can I say? I was young. Moonraker, I'm not a big Roger Moore James Bond fan, although Roger Moore as a person, I would have loved to have hung out with this guy. He always seemed like an absolute gentleman with a great sense of humor. This one I keep because, growing up, as I said, I liked space films, and this was, I guess, their attempt to take advantage of Star Wars' popularity. Also, I have been to Brazil a couple of times, and this one features James Bond going to Rio. And there's a fight sequence between him and Jaws on the tram system. Tram? I can't think of the right word. But anyway, I guess I'll file that under guilty pleasure as well. Mystery Science Theater, always loved that show. The movie, I think, gets a bad rap. The showrunners, stars of the show, they've called it one of the worst things they've ever done, but they're I think, being too hard on themselves. The jokes are solid, and I enjoy this movie very much, just as good as any episode of Mystery Science Theater you can find. Patton, probably the film that got me into war pictures, but George C. Scott, I maybe don't quite have his opening speech down as well as the Independence Day speech, but on a good day I can just about get it. This is overdue for a rewatch so I can give the speech another shot, but excellent picture. I was thinking of the final line of dialogue from this movie the other day, that all glory is fleeting, which is really Patton's way of saying life is rough. Okay. I'm not a big musical guy, but as a kid I went through a pirate phase, and my grandmother gifted me Pirates of Penzance, Gilbert and Sullivan production. Came out in, I think, 1980, stars Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline, more of a pirate king than Johnny Depp will ever be. No offense. Point Break. Again, I came to this movie very late. I didn't see it until college when it was on TV. I am an FBI agent. And also, Patrick Swayze, such a cool dude. Such a quotable movie, excellent film. There I am using that word again, but let's just say I'm using that word because Keanu Reeves is in this. But again, Patrick Swayze, excellent as Bodhi. Fear causes hesitation, and hesitation will cause your worst fears to come true. The ultimate Zen master. All right, Princess Bride. Not gonna lie, I didn't know that I owned this. I don't remember purchasing it or being gifted the movie. It's quotable. People like it. I like it too. Not enough to remember why I have it though, but oh well. Psycho. I mentioned the Paramount Theater earlier. I always enjoy watching Psycho on the big screen because there's someone in the audience who has not seen this movie ever. And at some point in the film, during one particular sequence, not the shower scene, a different one, there's always someone who lets out a high-pitched, intense scream while watching this. If you haven't seen it, what's wrong with you? Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't know if this is the original or not, because I feel like I retired that tape as well after it wore out. I might have bought this at half-price books for $1 or $2 some years ago, but Raiders of the Lost Ark, yeah, it's an excellent, it's a good movie. Define picture. I'm seriously trying to cut down on using the word excellent. I'll just call it a classic, my other go-to word. Temple of Doom. Darker. Not as good as Last Crusade. In fact, Last Crusade is my favorite. That one's definitely in the retired box. But Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, you can tell from the opening of this movie that Steven Spielberg has resented that he could never make a James Bond picture, because if you look closely, I'm pretty sure Harrison Ford is wearing the same tuxedo that Sean Connery was wearing in the opening scene of Goldfinger. So that's got to be an allusion to to James Bond. Steven Spielberg, longtime fan of that franchise, owns a 1964 Aston Martin, and yeah, I think always wanted to make a James Bond picture, and the opening of this film is definitely a allusion to that. Red Dawn, the best, worst movie ever made. Also starring Patrick Swayze, directed, I think written too, probably, yeah. Screenplay by Kevin Reynolds and the immortal, the loud, the legendary John Milius. Highly recommend. Long story short, the Soviets team up with Mexico and Cuba to invade the United States in the late 1980s, and a bunch of high school students band together with guns and other weaponry to fight back. Wolverines! Richard III. It's a... Oh gosh. In the 90s we had so many Shakespeare productions with kind of a, not revisionist, but some had a more modern setting, like they did a version of Hamlet with Ethan Hawke in modern day New York, I think. This different time period where they had like a World War II era setting told around Richard III. But yeah, solid movie. Ian McKellen is always a win, and co-stars Annette Bening and a young Robert Downey Jr. The Right Stuff. Excellent picture. If I had a nickel for every time I used the word excellent, I'd have, what, $2 now? But, let's see. Chuck Yeager, God bless him, the man who broke the sound barrier, is still alive. He is played in this movie by, why am I blanking on his name? Why is his name not on here? Well, it's the story of the Mercury 7. Sam Shepard, that's the guy who played Chuck Yeager. We also have Dennis Quaid as Gordo Cooper, Fred Ward as Gus Grissom, and Scott Glenn as Alan Shepard. Ed Harris also plays John Glenn, but if I can do a little space editorial real quick, Scott Glenn, not Scott Glenn. Alan Shepard was always my favorite of the Mercury 7. I think the only member of the Mercury 7 to also land on the moon during the Apollo program. John Glenn, good man, good American, but I think he's kind of overrated myself. Respectfully saying so. Or, if not overrated, Alan Shepard's just a cooler dude. The Rock. Michael Bay has a permanent get-out-of-jail-free card in my book because he made The Rock. This is one of the best action movies ever made. Sean Connery, Ed Harris, Nicolas Cage. I got to make a video about how this is secretly Sean Connery's last James Bond picture. Definitely got to visit that topic in the future. Rocky Horror Picture Show. Not just a good musical, but a beautiful tribute to 1950s sci-fi, pulp, horror films. What was it? Retro cinema, I guess you would call it that. And yeah, the movie that put Tim Curry on the map. Right. Roy Orbison and Friends, a black and white night. Roy Orbison, such a wonderful musician. Has all of his greatest hits on here, but backing up Roy are Tom Waits, Bruce Springsteen, Elvis Costello, Bonnie Raitt, many other friends, but excellent film. Dang, I gotta start stopping myself every time I use the word excellent. But good for background. Roy Orbison, one of my all-time favorites. All right. Another relatively new addition to my collection. I bought this some time ago at Half Price Books on South Lamar. This is the original Scarface. Came out in 1930, oh god, four? I'll look it up later. But yeah, the Al Pacino version is not the original. That's a remake. And this one stars Paul Mooney and Anne Borak, who's such a good looker, amazing actor or actress from the 1930s. She was also in one of the James Cagney pictures. I think she was in G-Men. Excellent black and white gangster flick. I'm gonna speed it up. Gotta love speed. Die Hard on a bus. Dennis Hopper. Excellent villain. Dang it. James, stop saying excellent. But Speed, I don't think there's anything I can add to this. It's Speed. It's excellent. You know you want to watch it. You better watch it. Alright, here we are at the end. Stagecoach, a black and white western directed by the legendary John Ford, starring John Wayne, the Duke, and John Carradine. Highly recommend if you want to get into classic black and white films or westerns in general. This was gifted to me by a friend. It came from her grandfather's collection, and she passed it on to me when he died. Very sweet. Right. Stargate stars I almost combined David Spade and James Spader into one person, but it stars James Spader and Kurt Russell. I think this was Roland Emmerich's film before Independence Day. It became a long-running TV show called Stargate SG-1. I hear they're going to do a reboot or remake, but I haven't heard anything about it lately. But if you like ancient Egypt meets science fiction action, check this out. Getting into the Star Trek films now. I've always been more of a Star Trek guy than a Star Wars guy, for the record. We have Star Trek 3. I would argue that the destruction of the Enterprise in this movie is just as emotional and tear-jerking as Spock's death in Star Trek 2. This is in no way as good as Star Trek 2, but not bad for a odd-numbered entry in the franchise. Those being considered to be the weaker ones in the even-numbered ordering. So I'm not sure if I wholeheartedly agree with that. Alright, Star Trek V, considered the weakest of the original cast films. I have a bit of a soft spot for it because Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 all took place after the events of each other. They all took place after the events of the previous one. And so this was the first time where the crew of the Enterprise could just go off on a mission. And it wasn't tied into the Genesis experiment or the events of Wrath of Khan. And yeah, it's just good. Well, not good. It's a standalone It's a standalone Star Trek movie. Okay. Undiscovered Country. This is a good one. I go back and forth on which movie I think is better, Star Trek 2 or Star Trek 6. But it takes current events, which at the time was the fall of the Soviet Union, and works it into a science fiction background. Beautiful send-off for the original cast. In fact, Avengers Endgame, I think, had a homage or a rip-off of the ending of this film last year when the credits rolled and the cast signed their names as the early credits were rolling, just like they did with the original cast in Star Trek 6. And off the top of my head, those are the only two examples I can think of where a film ended like that. Star Trek Generations, a very watchable film. In fact, growing up, this was the Star Trek film I would watch the most. It is like, I know it's been described by Cinemassacre and others as very much like an extended episode of The Next Generation, and I think that's a swell thing. It gets a lot of flack for the way they kill off Captain Kirk in the movie, but I'm more of a Captain Picard guy anyway, so what the heck. Alright. Star Trek First Contact. Like Wrath of Khan, it's the story about revenge, this one being Picard trying to take revenge against the Borg. Definitely the best Next Generation film. This is a widescreen edition. Probably the first widescreen VHS I ever owned. Although actually, I think I borrowed this from a friend in the late 90s and I just never gave it back. I hope he forgave me. This is also a relatively new addition to my collection. Star Wars Episode 1. It's also a widescreen edition. I found this a few months ago in the drawer, in a drawer at the maintenance office at work. Just completely random. So I watched it, had not seen it in, let's just call it a long time ago. And it also includes a documentary on the making of the film. What can I say about it? Let's see. It's not good. It's not a good movie. That being said, as someone who was raised on Mystery Science Theater, with the same friend I made the Battlestar Galactica riff with, we enjoyed making fun of this movie. So, even though it's disliked by so many people, it has a special place to me just for the good times we had making fun of it. Also, the lightsaber fight at the end is badass. Actually got to read the description of this one. This is Edgar Allan Poe's Tales of Terror. It's part of the Vincent Price collection. I vaguely recall this. I'll have to watch this after I'm done. But it's a series of short films. It's from 1962, 85 minutes long. All these stories are based on Edgar Allan Poe tales. We have Morella, the Black Cat, and The Case of M. So I wish I could give it a review, but I actually don't remember it, and I'll have to form an opinion about it later. But it's Vincent Price doing Edgar Allan Poe, so that's got to be amazing. All right, we got 2 Ninja Turtle tapes of the cartoon. I need to give these a rewatch as well, because I'd be surprised if they were still playable or in good condition, because I definitely watched a lot of them, or watched these a lot growing up. One is The Shredder is Splintered. The other is Taste of the Killer Pizzas. Killer Pizza, my God. That's diabolical. Alright. Sean Connery and Thunderball. Good movie. Anything with Sean Connery is worth watching. Tommy Boy. I never saw Black Sheep with Chris Farley and David Spade. They made a series of films together in the 90s, and this was not based on any Saturday Night Live material, unlike Coneheads, and there were a few Saturday Night Live movies that came out in the 90s, but this is about the son of not a tire plant, what they make at Callahan Auto? They made brake pads, I think, or they were trying to make brake. Anyway, Chris Farley's trying to save his dad's car factory, and hilarity ensues. All right, The Who's Tommy musical. I have good memories from this one because at the movie theater that I worked at way back in '07, we used to have a projector in the lobby that was hooked up to a tape player / DVD player. And one night on a very slow Thursday, I brought this tape and we actually played it over the projector above concessions just for sheer entertainment. It was beautiful. Another one of those big tapes I have to put the other way around. Okay. And as mentioned earlier, War of the Worlds. The first movie I saw on the big screen at the Paramount Theater. I think that they did that double feature of War of the Worlds and The Day the Earth Stood Still to play off the success of Independence Day, because when you watch War of the Worlds, you do realize how much they borrowed in Independence Day when they made that film. And the 1951 or 52? In this 1952 adaptation of the H.G. Wells story still holds up to this day. Probably the crowning achievement of 1950s science fiction, not to take anything away from other great films like Invaders from Mars, Day the Earth Stood Still, and others. All right, wrapping up with Where the Buffalo Roam, another movie based on the life of Hunter S. Thompson. Neil Young does the opening credit music, and look it up. It's very catchy. We got Wild Wild West, This is a guilty pleasure of mine. It's in no way a good movie, but what can I say? It makes me laugh. And in the back, I have a VHS of Batman Mask of the Phantasm, but I don't want to dislodge it. Batman Mask of the Phantasm, yeah, along with Batman 89, The Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises, it's one of the best Batman movies ever made, hands down. We got Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah, all the big animated stuff goes on the bottom because these are too wide to properly go on the shelf. If you stack them like the rest of them, it causes the shelf to stick out a little bit. But we have Nightmare Before Christmas, not directed by Tim Burton, but they put his name on it to get more kids into the theaters, and I was definitely one of them because I saw the name Tim Burton and I wanted to watch it. Mom took some convincing because she thought the movie looked a little too gross, but in point of fact, it was directed by Henry Selick. I want to make sure I get his name right. All right, we got Fantasia. I'm in no way a Disney guy, but growing up in America, you get Disney movies whether you like it or not. This one, however, is my favorite. If I had to pick a Disney favorite, because it introduced me to classical music. Enough said. All right, we got Peter Pan in the back. And to take us on home, we got Boris Karloff narrating and providing the voice of the Grinch in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. 101 Dalmatians. In the back, we have Aladdin. Okay, now right here, I do have my tub of VHSs that have been retired because they've worn out and can no longer be watched, but I keep them for sentimental value or to be autographed. The first of which, last year, I was lucky enough to meet Nicholas Meyer, director of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek The Undiscovered Country, and he autographed this one for me. Great filmmaker. I need to watch more of his Sherlock Holmes films. He's written and directed, I think, Time After Time and The 5% Solution. I need to rent those eventually and check them out. All right. And let's see, we got my VHS of Star Wars. Again, it's been worn out. As well as Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay, so yeah, this is my original Raiders of the Lost Ark. The other one is in good working order. And then we got Last Crusade, which, in fairness, is my favorite Indiana Jones movie. Sue me, I'm a Sean Connery fan. And also down here we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was always confused by this because, let's see, the opening of this film has a Pizza Hut commercial. Look it up on YouTube. It's definitely something that'll bring back nostalgic memories of your childhood if you were there. But it's a Pizza Hut commercial to open a film where in the film the turtles eat Domino's pizza. And I was curious we're always curious as to why two pizza companies got to share the same movie. Probably had to do with the home video rights versus the theatrical rights. All right. And we got some other stuff on the bottom. Let's see. There's a Curious George animated movie down there, as well as Three Amigos. Okay. All right. And finally, saving the, I won't call it the best for last, but definitely the most important for last. This is my original Batman 89 tape. Again, I've watched it to the point where it's been worn out. Again, keep it for sentimental value. Maybe I'll have it autographed by someone from the film one day. You can't watch a Warner Brothers movie without a Warner Brothers ball cap. If you know what I'm referencing, good for you. All right. Batman Returns. This one does not age well. And in fact, this might be hearsay. My least favorite of the original four. If they renamed this movie Catwoman Begins, it would be a better picture because Michelle Pfeiffer is amazing. And that's what the movie has going for it. Batman Forever, my second favorite of the original four. Say what you will about this movie, but it actually feels like it's about Batman. I don't think the villains take up as much of the screen time as they did in the Burton films. Val Kilmer, I think, is better than Michael Keaton. I wrote a piece for BatmanOnFilm.com tackling that very topic last year. Look it up if you don't mind. But Val Kilmer, if you grew up in the 1990s, a Val Kilmer movie was a big deal. He had great success with Top Gun and The Doors, and this movie came out after Tombstone, and he also had The Saint, and, oh gosh, another movie that he starred in at the time, but I think he was a big name in the 90s. Oh yeah, he was in that Island of Dr. Moreau movie that I finally watched last year. That's not too good, but worth watching once just to see how much of a jerk Marlon Brando could be on the big screen. And finally, we got Batman and Robin. I don't know if this is the original tape. I might have thrown it out, because just as much as Episode 1 showed Star Wars fans that a Star Wars movie could be bad, this showed Batman fans that a Batman movie could be bad. I remember buying this VHS at a Blockbuster Music, and let's see, I would have been 10, and Mom and I were at the checkout counter. We had previously rented the film because I missed it when it was in theaters, and then we were checking out. Mom put her stuff on the counter, and then she grabbed this, and then looked at me and said, "Do you really want to buy this?" And I said yes. I was in denial about it being bad, but I eventually realized it with repeat viewings that, yeah, a Batman movie can be bad. But I can laugh at it, as I can other bad flicks on this shelf, and the fact that this movie came out gave us that beautiful Christopher Nolan trilogy.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the tour of my VHS collection and all the stories that go along with them. A little bit of housekeeping. I accidentally repeated myself and called the sequel to Jurassic Park, Jurassic Park. Now, to be fair, the full title is The Lost World Jurassic Park, so I was halfway right. And for some bizarre reason, I couldn't think of the word cable car when talking about the fight scene in Moonraker. My apologies to the city of Rio de Janeiro. I also did a little inventory, and it turns out if I had a nickel for every time I said excellent, I'd actually have $1.20. If I had a nickel for every time I said solid, only 60 cents, and if you count any or ah in between my words, I'd have a whopping $6.10. Anywho, if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and most importantly, with this being my inaugural video, please subscribe. If not, it's okay, you won't hurt my feelings. My name is James, and please do not talk or think too much.